Sarah, did you ask me to unmute?
I just was gonna let you know that everybody is here. So I don't know if you want to check and make sure everybody's mic works. We can certainly do that. Commissioner Benia.
Sure. Sounds good. So commissioners, let's do a quick mic check. We'll just go in alphabetical order by last name. Miss Andrews.
Present.
Excellent. Commissioner Faria.
Here.
Perfect. Commissioner Goldstein.
Yeah, I'm here.
Commissioner Patton. Commissioner Patton, can we do a quick mic check? Can you hear us? Okay. Commissioner Roche.
Here.
Excellent. Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Perfect. Everyone sounds clear except for Commissioner Patton. Marcus, do you want to try your mic?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Perfect.
Via. Anyone else want to give it a try?
I think we're good.
Sounds good.
I'll say welcome back.
Thanks. Hopefully everyone survives a crazy smoke. Or not.
All right, I raised mine.
Who did?
And Angela did too.
Oh, I see you guys. Yeah. There you guys. Sounds good.
So we'll raise our hands electronically then.
Yes. And then I'll call on you in the order in which you raise your hand.
Okay. And poor Angela always has to go.
I see your hand up.
Yes. Everyone raise your hands. Sounds great.
This meeting is being recorded.
Excuse me, Sarah.
Yes.
There's a Jane King attendee, staff person.
She is.
Mr. Chair, or Sarah.
Yes. Hi, Commissioner Patton.
Gary Patton, I'm in.
Wonderful. Happy to hear your voice.
Good to hear yours too.
Hey.
It seems like we are ready to go. Ray, if you would like to kick off our meeting.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. Good evening. We will call our meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Good evening, everyone. To our September 10th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. This is a special meeting that is being conducted utilizing teleconferencing and electronic means consistent with the State of California Executive Order number 29-20, dated March 17, 2020, and Alameda County Health Officer number 20-10, dated April 29, 2020, regarding the COVID pandemic. We are streaming tonight's meeting on the city's website and broadcasting on Comcast Channel 15, as well as via YouTube. Please note that we are now using the Zoom platform to conduct these meetings. Members of the public had opportunities to send emails to city staff on topics related to tonight's agenda. And all of those correspondence were distributed to the Planning Commission via email into the city's website under documents received after the published agenda. So with that, we'll get our meeting rolling tonight, and we'll start with roll call. Ms. Chan, would you please take roll?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Andrews.
Present.
Commissioner Faria.
Here.
Commissioner Goldstein.
Present.
Commissioner Patton. Commissioner Patton.
Here?
Thank you. Commissioner Roche.
Here.
Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Chair Bonilla.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chan. All right, so now we're going to move on to public comments. It's now time to hear from the public. Each speaker will have 3 minutes this evening to address the commission on items that are not on the agenda. For those of you joining us via Zoom, please raise your hand. And for those of you joining us over the phone, you'll want to press *9, and then we'll recognize you for public comments. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Chan to moderate the public comments portion of tonight's meeting. And at the end of the public comment period, we'll address any questions that may come up. With that, Ms. Chan.
Thank you, Chair. If you wish to speak and you're using the Zoom application, please click the raise hand button. If you are dialing in, press *9 to raise your hand on the phone and use *6 to unmute yourself when called to speak. If you are streaming the meeting through Zoom on your computer but dialing in via phone, please mute yourself so that there is no feedback sound during the meeting. If there is disruptive feedback or excessive noise during the meeting, your audio will be disabled. Chair, at this time, we have 6 attendees, but nobody has raised their hand.
Okay. Maybe we'll give it another 60 seconds, Ms. Chan, and if no one raises their hand, we'll proceed to our first public hearing item of the evening.
Very good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Still seeing no hands raised. Going once, going twice. All right. Ms. Chan will go ahead and close the public comments. Thank you. And we will move on to the first item on the agenda this evening. This item is an appeal of the planning director's decision to approve a 2-year extension of the approved mixed-use development consisting of 72 residential townhomes and 8,000 square feet of commercial space on a 5.88 acre parcel located at the southwest corner of Mission Boulevard and Industrial, requiring approval of a vesting tentative tract map and site plan review. We'll go ahead with this item, so may we hear from staff? You're on mute, Sarah.
Let me just share my screen.
Okay.
My presentation. And we'll get started. Okay, well, good evening. Chair and members of the Planning Commission and members of the community. Tonight, we will be reviewing an appeal of the Planning Director's decision to approve a 2-year extension of a previously approved project at the former Holiday Bowl site located at the corner of Mission Boulevard and Industrial Parkway. The approved project involved, as you mentioned, development of 72 townhomes and an 8,000 square foot commercial building with centrally located green space and a park area behind the commercial building and in the central location around the townhomes. Let's see, it's not advancing. Hold on. There we go. Just a little project history. The project was originally brought before both the Planning Commission and the City Council in July of 2014 for conceptual design review. Following that, they took in all of the feedback that they heard from both the Planning Commission and the City Council at that time, as well as the community outreach that they did, and incorporated it into an application that was formally submitted in October of 2015. That project underwent its review and was ultimately approved by the Planning Commission in January of 2017. During that time, there was a bit of work that needed to be done related to environmental cleanup of the site. And in November of 2019, staff received a request from the applicant requesting an extension of their original approval. The original approval was good for 3 years, but they were nearing, time for when that was going to expire in the early part of January of 2020. In February, the Regional Water Quality Control Board had finally approved the vapor mitigation plan that the applicant had been working on with them for the site. And then in March of 2020, the extension was granted by the planning director. But shortly after the decision was made, an appeal of that decision was filed. And now we are here tonight for the Planning Commission to hear that appeal. As outlined in the staff report, in order to grant an extension, staff needs to review the regulatory framework covering the entitlements that were originally granted. In this case, for site plan review, the city needed to consider the cause for the delay and whether the project is still in compliance with the development regulations. In the case of the vesting tentative track map, the city shall consider whether circumstances have changed, which would warrant a change in design or improvement of the tentative map. And in both cases, these were considered, and that the delays were related to the environmental cleanup issues, for which were largely out of the direct control of the developer. And the project was deemed to still be in compliance with the current development regulations. Staff did impose some additional conditions of approval as a part of that extension, related to timely demolition and concurrent construction of the residential with the commercial component of the project. As you can see in the chart here, which is also included in page 6 of the staff report, the project is still in compliance with the required development standards. The density is within the allowed density range, and the development conforms with the required setbacks, height, and lot coverage standards. Following staff's decision, an appeal was filed. The appellants are requesting that the Planning Commission deny the extension. They believe the city should put the property, which the city actually does not own, out to bid for a different project that would provide for a higher density and some on-site affordable housing. Again, this project complies with all of the development standards, and as the city doesn't own the property, we don't have the authority to put the property out to bid in search of a higher density project. This particular project, while they struggled to move forward within the original three-year timeframe, they are ready to move forward quickly now, and we will likely see movement on the site within the next several months, aside from obviously the demolition, which has already begun. If the entitlements are not extended, another developer will need to work with the current property owner on a new purchase contract. That new project would have to go through a new entitlement process, and that new developer would then also need to coordinate with the Regional Water Quality Control Board, all of which is likely to take 3 to 5 years before any action would actually take place on this site. In addition, I would point out that there is strong neighborhood support for this project as it was originally approved, as evidenced by all the email correspondence that we've received and shared with the Commission and included as attachments to the staff report. Along the lines of community feedback, the developer did work extensively with the community between 2014 and 2017 when the original project was approved. At the 2017 hearing, there were some concerns expressed about bike lane connections, all of which have since been worked out and addressed by the developer for both the Mission Boulevard and the Industrial Parkway frontages. There were also some concerns over spillover parking, but the project, as I mentioned, incorporates parking that met all of the requirements. Otherwise, there was overwhelming support from the community for approval of the project, and it was approved 7-0 by the commission at that time. And then, as I mentioned, we've received a number of emails from community members in the Fairway Park and Twin Bridges neighborhoods that are adjacent to this site, expressing their support for approval of the original project that was approved. I would like to make 2 modifications to conditions of approval. The first is related to off-site improvements, condition of approval number 42, which has been revised slightly just to clarify the bike lane improvements that are required along the Industrial Parkway frontage. And the second is a modification to one of the added conditions of approval number 164 related to the timing of the construction of residential and the commercial. The applicant has expressed some concerns in this post-COVID market that there might be some delays in being able to deliver the commercial component of the project and how that might impact the ability to deliver the housing units in an era where housing is so critical. However, recognizing the need and the desire from both the community and the city council to have that commercial component, they are willing to record a deed restriction requiring commercial for that corner in perpetuity. So in the interim, though, they have committed to do all site improvements that will be required to prep the site for eventual vertical construction. But obviously, there would be nothing that would preclude construction from beginning sooner should the market allow for that. So staff would be making a couple of recommendations to conditions for the council or for the Planning Commission to consider. With that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission deny the appeal and uphold the Planning Director's decision to approve a 2-year extension of the previously approved project, which involves the development of 72 townhomes and 8,000 square feet of commercial space, subject to the previous and amended conditions of approval, including the slight modifications to conditions of approval number 42 and 164 that I just mentioned tonight. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those at this time.
Thank you, Sarah, for that presentation. This is now the appropriate time for my colleagues to ask staff any questions on the report that you just heard. And to do so, we're going to ask that you raise your hand in the Zoom platform, and I will acknowledge the commissioners in the order in which their hands are raised. All right. So it looks like our first question is going to come from Commissioner Roche.
Thank you, Chair Bonilla. There's a couple things I wanted to clarify, and that is that, I read all of the comments from the community, and there was a lot of, talk about what the city has done to uphold this project. And I just wanted to clarify with staff that it had nothing to do with staff or the city, right? This was all an environmental delay, from my understanding. Is that correct?
That's correct. So there was just a lot of issues with some of the cleanup that needed to be done. There were a lot of changeover and changes in standards through the Regional Water Quality Control Board, which took a lot of time and back and forth with the applicant. There's a whole detailed list of some of those struggles and those challenges that were included as an attachment to the staff report that you could take a look at. But yeah, and if you have specific questions as to that, the applicant is here and would be able to answer any of those specific questions for you. But the main issue was dealing with the environmental cleanup, and that's what took so long. And like I said, they just got clearance in March of this year, or February of this year, and shortly thereafter is when we granted the extension. But we received the request in November to extend the entitlements.
Okay, thank you. And then the other thing I wanted to hear just was, because of the fires, is there anything that's holding this up now because of the fires? Does this change any of the environmental concerns because of the materials that might have been, disturbed during the fire?
No. And so the demolition has begun already. Right now, they're dealing with a lot of the what is that called? It's the abatement portion of, it's usually the first part of demo where you're dealing with separating clean materials from those that may have, aren't so clean, that may be some asbestos filled materials. So they're dealing with the abatement portion right now. And shortly thereafter, as soon as the abatement stuff is all taken care of, then you'll start seeing the actual physical demolition of the building. But that has already begun.
Okay, great. And then my final question has to do with the letter that was received about the, future environmental concerns with the materials that they're going to use. And I just wanted to hear maybe staff or the applicant or the developer address that and where they see that, how they've put that to rest going forward.
Hi, this is Joe Burke from the City Attorney's Office, and I just, the applicant can speak to this, but just from staff's perspective, that issue was not properly preserved for the appeal.
Okay.
So it shouldn't be considered as part of this appeal.
Okay, great. Then that's fine with me.
Anything else, Commissioner Rose? Any other questions?
That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner.
may I verbally raise my hand?
Sure. Or you can do it by pressing *9, whichever you prefer. But would you mind if I called on Commissioner Andrews first, who had her hand raised, and then I'll get right to you?
No, you actually let Commissioner Patton go ahead.
Sweet. Commissioner Patton, the floor is yours for questions.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to, first of all, provide a couple of comments in terms of just a broader context of what's before us tonight, both for the Planning Commission and for the public, in terms of the time extension and the action by the director and the appeal that was filed. The vesting map provisions of the Subdivision Map Act came along in the early 1990s. At that time, the whole state was in a major new cities growth spurt, suburban growth. And for the Bay Area or our immediate surroundings, we're talking about cities like San Ramon, Danville, East Contra Costa County, so Brentwood, Oakley, Pittsburgh, Antioch, Southern California, North San Diego, LA, Orange County. So it was going on all over the state, huge growth spurt, subdivisions everywhere in the early 90s. Well, because these were new cities, there were growth control battles going on in these new cities in terms of what the vision was for these communities, and the politics were changing. The pendulum was swinging between no growth or little growth versus major growth, and we want to be somebody. So the developers were getting caught in the middle. So the legislature created the vesting map provision to make sure that once an entitlement was granted, that the developers had an opportunity to exercise their entitlement no matter what the politics were. So I just wanted to say that just kind of as a backdrop for what we're looking at today. Secondly, the appellants, I read the appellant's letter, but I did not see the appellant address really what the findings were for the planning director and how the director, in their opinion, erred in her decision to grant this time extension. So I'd like the appellant to address that specifically in their comments at the appropriate time for the record. Secondly, the applicant, I would like the applicant to comment on the status of the cleanup of that site. Obviously, that site's been an eyesore for a long time. The fire that happened recently made it even worse. And while I saw some movement in terms of demolition after the fire, I haven't seen any noticeable work in the last few weeks. So I would like the applicant to provide the commission and the public with some idea of when that site's going to be fully cleared of fire-related debris and other structures and fenced. And my third comment has to do with the applicant requested modified condition related to a deed restriction. And while I understand the connection between the residential and the communities and the council's desire to have commercial on that corner, my concern would be that my understanding is that commercial site is a separate parcel, which in theory means it could be sold. In theory, some other person might come in and want to do something different on that corner. I would not want to predispose what the commission or council might consider appropriate at some point in the future, especially with the state of retail right now, by some deed restrictions that we added on just through a time extension. So that is a concern for me. I would like to have the city reserve the right, if there is a request for another use in that corner, for anybody to go through the process and be able preserve their right to be able to ask that question. So those are my comments.
Okay.
I can certainly address, if you don't mind, your question about the demolition. So as I mentioned, right now they're in the process of doing the interior abatement work, and that's why you haven't seen a lot of physical movement out on the property at this time. So they need to complete the abatement work first, and once that is done and that's been cleaned, then you'll start seeing the other work. So I would imagine it may still be several weeks for them to complete the abatement portion, and then following that, you'll start seeing the actual deconstruction of, whatever remains out on that site. And then the site will be closed up and buttoned up. So that's as much as I can probably, I have as far as sharing, as far as the demolition timeline at this point.
Thank you.
And would the appellant like to address Commissioner Patton's question around what the planning director's approval was, and address that a little bit more directly in terms of your appeal?
Well, I do have a statement that includes addressing that question, and I would like to read my statement at one time and maybe get an extra 30 seconds or so to make sure I hit the point that Commissioner Patton asked me to address. So at the time that you want to hear my statement, my 5-minute statement, I will address that question regarding the findings of the planning director.
I think now would be appropriate if that's fine, Joe.
Rowe. R-O.
So you could.
Rosemary.
That's the attorney.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
So, Chair, you could have her wait to address that till her presentation, because I do believe Angela was waiting for the next.
I can yield my time and let them present, because they might answer some of my questions in their presentation.
Okay, so let's go ahead and have them present now, and then we will continue to take commissioner questions, and then we will open this up for public comment.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Rowe. Please
introduce yourself.
My name is Rosemary Rowe, R-O. Some people call me Rowe Aguilar. And I've been a resident of Fairway Park since 1992. And I was a member of the Fairway Park Neighborhood Task Force that guided the development of the golf course property. And so I've been following this development. I've spoken to several council members in the past regarding development of the bowling alley property. And Glenn Kirby, my husband, has been on the Hayward Planning Commission and the Alameda County Planning Commission. So both of us are appealing this planning director's decision. At this meeting, I'm speaking on the Mission Village project. The current plan presents a desired starting point for this prime property. Upper middle class townhouses. Don't have a problem with that, but if the planning process ends here, if you grant an extension to this plan, you as public officials are acquiescing to a development plan at half the density allowed in an urban transit zone. And this is where I think the city is at fault in approving this property at minimalist. It allows 17.5 required, that's the minimum. And this has 18 units per acre. So you have approved a development, 18 units per acre, 35 up to 35 allowed on this property, and it's half the density, and it's an urban transit zone. And I don't think that the planning director took into consideration how you are undermining Hayward's obligation to meet its commitment to provide low-income housing to our community in a timely manner. Now, I reviewed an article in the Daily Review at the end of last year. Hayward, in very low-income housing, has a D. In low-income housing, D. In medium-income housing, F. And we are using this property for higher, moderate income without any low income when we have all this density going to waste. We're throwing it away. And that, I think, is the basis for our appeal, that circumstances have changed. We now know Hayward is way behind in its obligations for very low, low, and moderate low income housing. And that could be addressed on this property now. This is ignoring transit planning 101. No apartments. Why don't we have apartments on top of the commercial building? That's transit planning 101. And the housing challenges of this unprecedented time in our world. This is a very sad story for Hayward, I think. But now with the expiration of the entitlements, we have been given a do-over, a second chance to redesign this development. Now, I'm not saying that you have to put it out to bid. I never said that. Sarah's saying that. But we never said you have to put it out to bid. There may be a way you can negotiate for more density. So that's why we have filed the appeal. Did we get a payoff or a kickback like some people suggested? No, we're just out of $400 for the cost of the appeal. Are we trying to kill the project? Only if it isn't expanded to include housing for a range of incomes, specifically low income, where we're getting Ds. As I walk around Fairway Park neighborhood, I see signs in front of houses thanking essential workers, health workers, low-income workers, thanking our heroes. So, do we not want our heroes living in the Mission Village project? Look at it. Look at it. 72 townhouses, minimum 3 bedrooms. 3 bedrooms, starts at 3 bedrooms. It really is a sham. And the reason I think that was approved is it was a gift to the NIMBYs. No one wanted to tackle the politics of putting low-income housing on that property. Whatever the developer's reason for failing to comply, and I know you have to do this legally. That's why I'm talking about our grades and our regional housing needs assessment. The city's primary responsibility is to consider if a change in course is warranted. Perhaps the city could use what Valley Oak Partners has done so far and reconfigure the density from 18 units, the bare minimum, or the bare maximum, I should say, to a modest 25 to 30 units per acre, with an additional mix of housing such as 1 or 2 bedroom condos, work-live units, and apartments, especially on the commercial. I am advocating for this kind of change. Why am I advocating? Because the Hayward General Plan, the Hayward Regional Housing Needs Assessment, where our DDF grades are, the Hayward Navigation Center's commitment to providing housing to all its residents, the housing crisis, which is at its worst ever and will probably get worse, and the location of this signature property by transit, public transit, all demand it. They demand it. And I request our leaders, that's you, the members of the Planning Commission, have the courage, the Hayward big heart, and the vision to uphold the appeal and deny the extension. I do think there is statutory basis that now is the time to change this design and include lower income housing. In these historic times, there is a desperate need for low-income housing opportunities for our children, future generation, and our heroes. Thank you. I hope.
Thank you very much for those comments. Commissioner Andrews, questions for staff or for the appellant?
Is the developer able to comment on some of what the appellant brought up? Is he able to do that right now?
I would say that's up to the commission and the chair if you would like the applicant to make his statement now, or if you want to ask your questions and then allow him to speak after. That's sort of up to you, Chair.
Okay. Well, I'll just ask I'll ask a couple of questions right now. How long did you, this is for the applicant, how long did you anticipate doing environmental cleanup prior to the obstacles you had identified during the identification of the dry cleaning issue here at the site?
Can I respond right now?
Yes, please.
So I don't know if you noticed on the chronology that we submitted, but we actually started work on the cleanup well prior to the approval of the site in January. And we did that to give us time to get it done and some contingency time, because after the approval of the tenant map, then you have to go and do the improvement plans and process the final map. And so we felt like we had given ourselves 6 months of contingency to get that work done prior to when the improvement plans would be completed and the final map, so we could immediately roll right into work. So we started before, gave ourselves a contingency, and then unfortunately, as outlined in that chronology, it blew right through it all.
Thank you. And how come there wasn't any affordable housing component offered as part of this project? Can you give us some rationale why it wasn't an aspect of this project?
Yeah, so at the time, the affordable housing ordinance with the city offered several different options, and we looked at that relative to the cost that it would take to demolish everything out there and do the environmental remediation and all that work. And so at that time, we had selected the in lieu fee as both the way to get the project moving forward and a way to help in terms of fund additional affordable housing projects, which had been contemplated throughout the city, and be able to fund at that time.
And what were some of the options for retail that you were looking at for the commercial, the 8,000 square feet?
Yeah, great question. So the 8,000 square feet had been programmed in a way where we felt like we were going to have 3 tenants, and we wanted one of the tenants to be like a coffee shop type, bagel shop type place, one of the tenants to be a restaurant that could take advantage of the outdoor seating and be able to obviously take advantage of the space there. We had this thought, and I still believe, right, that you have this great golf course behind you, and people wanted a place to go after taking advantage of the city's golf course. People wanted a place to go from the community. As we talked about outreach, I would think the number one thing we heard back was we need a place to go to meet with friends, to be able to watch a football game that just kicked off tonight, all those types of things. We don't have that in this area, give that to us. And we thought there's a need there, that's a good match. And then the last tenant, we didn't know, that was kind of a wild card, could have been a variety of things, but that's sort of how we thought through programming that site.
Okay, thank you. I might have more questions later on, but that
Okay.
helps for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Andrews. Commissioner Stevens?
Thank you. I'd be interested in hearing if the site remediation costs pose a significant cost to the site development. Is it a significant component of the project? And does it affect the economics of the site?
That's a great question, and that answer is a resounding yes. And it came in several forms. One was the direct costs associated with it. Unfortunately, we had the water board change policies on how they approached remediation for the site and what they would require. So in essence, we had to remediate the site twice based on that. And so there were direct costs that far exceeded what we had ever anticipated. The other sort of hidden cost, but you probably can recognize because you do this a lot, the time delay costs money in a great way with carry costs with real estate. And so that was the other side that hit us with this. And so unfortunately, absolutely, this environmental remediation, which we moved forward, and, as I mentioned before, we felt like that was going to be done early. We had no thought ever that this was going to take as long as it was. In fact, while that remediation was going on, we did in fact start all of the improvement plans and final map at that time concurrently, so that when the remediation was done, we'd be able to hit the ground running. And then this whole thing just completely caught us off guard.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens, any additional questions? Sounds good. All right. Is there anything the applicant wants to share before we go into public comments?
I mean, we've kind of hit on this. I just want to say, that we really understand and are sympathetic to the housing crisis and what's going on. I mean, we're busy right now trying to identify opportunities within the area to create more housing. And as you can imagine, right, you do it on your end, we do it on our end. Like here we are, we're the groups that are working on the lines and trying to create this. And so I'm really sympathetic to that. I really understand the nature of the appeal and the goal of the appeal. I guess with that being said, I hope that the circumstances around this project are considered. They were discussed at length with staff. This is a very different set of circumstances than you might see with a new project coming through, right? And how we would start at this time, just like we did back then when we did our study sessions with both Planning Commission and City Council and kind of lay out and outline, here's what we think should happen on the site. We did that at that time. And what you see before you with this consideration, the original project that was approved, was the evolution of both that and extensive neighborhood outreach. I mean, we've been working on this project now for, if you can believe it, 7 years. I mean, it's been 7 years working with the city and the neighborhood on this. And so, no one wants this project to move forward more than us. We want to build the project, and we believe that this project will be a fantastic asset to the city of Hayward, will address needs and satisfy the desires of the local neighborhood. This is not a case of the developer sitting around on the sideline that you may see because the project didn't pencil, or maybe there was no funding, or maybe, we got distracted doing something else. I mean, the simple summary of the situation was that we didn't begin construction because we couldn't begin construction. We didn't have the required government approval. And in this case, I know there was the question before, the city of Hayward was fantastic. They've been fantastic working with us. We were hung up with the environmental clearance and another agency out there known as the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And so we've been battling, trying to get that completed with the shifting policies over the last 3 years. And as I mentioned before, during that, we've been moving forward in good faith, doing everything we can so that once we got the clearance, we'd be ready to go. And that's where we are now. I mean, it's just so amazing to be at the 1 yard line and have this, and, you know, can taste it, and we're ready to go. And now we have to obviously consider here and talk about this appeal tonight. The other thing, as mentioned by staff, you know, this project complies with the general plan and complies with all the zoning requirements. We did this in a way that didn't request variances that you may see a lot of times. And third, as mentioned, we've worked extensively with the neighborhood on the design of this project. And it was really heartwarming to see the support of the neighborhood. I don't think I've ever seen, and maybe you have, the amount of support via the letters. To get 40 letters in support of the project is just a really, really unique thing. So we understand as much as anyone the housing and the housing needs of the location in the state. This project will greatly go to help that crisis. It's ready to go. It's housing ready to be built today. As staff mentioned, you know, the process, if it were to start over, would take years. This was taken 7 years just for this. And so I hope as you go forward and deliberate and hear from any additional public comments, that you do take into consideration the circumstances for this, and importantly, how they relate relative to the considerations based on Hayward Municipal Code as to what is considered relative to the cause of the delay and whether we're still in conformance. And I really appreciate your consideration on this matter. Thanks.
Thanks, Doug. You know, the only question I have before we go to public comments is, can you talk a little bit about the public outreach you did, you know, leading up to the January 2017, you know, public hearing of the Planning Commission? Because you're right, there is a lot of support for this to move forward, but maybe you can talk a little bit about how the community, how they initially provided input into the plans that we're considering tonight.
Yeah, so, you know, it was interesting, and I know there's a lot of strong opinion on this topic, but it actually started with the study sessions with both commission and council, and that for us at least was very helpful, because in addition to getting the input and the feedback, you know, from the civic leaders of the city and what was you know, thoughts on what should go there, that also was a good avenue to start hearing and meeting people, because there was public involvement at that time. So that was sort of the genesis of it. But from there, then we went and we held formal neighborhood meetings with broad distribution and noticing, and got a lot of people beyond just, you know, the adjacent neighborhood, which obviously we wanted to work with and be very sympathetic to, but broader, we had civic leaders attend that as well. And so there was lots of feedback that came in terms of the things that were desired, the type of product that was desired, how to take, I mean, it got down to things such as, you know, I think we've got this great asset behind us with the golf course. We should have homes, right, that take advantage and have the views of the golf course and provide eyes on it. And so we reorientated homes. We provided more open space, increasing the size of the park, talked about parking, talked about the type of retail, talked about the type of homes. So all that came through this process of both, you know, formal events. And then from there, it actually branched off into individual meetings as well, as people would reach out and meet individually, lots of those types of meetings as well. And so it was, I feel like I'm biased, one of the best kind of combination, right, of groups working together to understand how to best move forward, addressing the city's needs and the neighborhood's needs on what should go on this corner.
Thank you. Seeing no hands raised for commissioners, I'm going to go ahead and move to public comments now. So I want to thank the appellant for sharing their perspective, and thank you to the applicant for sharing yours, and city staff, thanks for your presentation. Now what I would like to do is invite members of the public to comment on tonight's item. To do so, they'll need to raise their hand, as Ms. Chan had mentioned in the beginning, and she will facilitate this next part of our meeting. So Ms. Chan, do we have any speakers who wish to make a comment on this item?
Thank you, Chair. Let me just start. If you wish to speak and you are using the Zoom application, please click the raise hand button. If you are dialing in, press *9 to raise your hand on the phone and use *6 to unmute yourself when called to speak. If you are streaming the meeting through Zoom on your computer, but dialing in via phone, please mute yourself so that there is no feedback sound during the meeting. If there is disruptive feedback or excessive noise during the meeting, your audio will be disabled. All right, Chair, right now I see one hand raised, so hang on one second. Speaker Mimi, please unmute yourself.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Mimi. Go ahead.
Great.
You're on the
Hi.
commission.
My name is Mimi Bauer. I'm the president of the Ferry Park Neighborhood Association. I am the first person that was contacted by Doug Rich and his company when the city told them you need to go to the community and talk to the community about your project. We had a number of meetings with the neighborhood association, executive board with the company, with their architects and designers, and then we brought it to full neighborhood association meetings numerous times. We actually worked for 2 years with this company. We asked them to buy more land. They did. We asked them to put parks in there. They did. We asked them to get a better view for the houses and for the commercial of the golf course to make it more viable. They did. We asked them to move streets around, bicycle paths around, everything. We asked them for more sustainable things. We even asked that, unlike most developers, that they actually do a nice architectural design, not just for the front of the house, but the sides and backs, because people are going to be going through and seeing the backs of the house. So they even have architectural details around the windows and such of the sides and backs of the houses, which is something you really don't see. And they were so willing to work with us and so cooperative. It was the best experience we have ever had with a developer in meeting all the things that we thought were important for the community. Now, I don't know where Rose is coming from, but this is really irritating because Fairway Park is a very progressive neighborhood. We have been responsible for the creating of Access Hayward for the city and a lot of other projects. We supported the low-income housing Sarah Connor in our neighborhood. We have supported the Eden housing project that was part of the whole Joe Montana thing. Everything else fell apart except that housing. We could have rejected it. No, we supported it fully. We also supported, which hasn't been built yet, the Meta project, which is another affordable income housing. This community has done its more than fair share of putting in low and affordable housing. We do need some market rate housing to make sure that we have enough taxes going to our city to help support all the things that our city does for the communities that need affordable housing and that need shelter for homeless and for everything else. There has to be a balance. And we work very hard. And in this community, we have accepted quite a number of projects. We wanted them to be good too, and we talked to those developers too, and we ensured that they provided good, low, and affordable income housing in our neighborhood. And I object, and I am so frustrated.
Excuse me, your time is up.
Sorry.
It's okay. Any final comments? Your time is up.
Just that we haven't been waiting just 7 years for this project. That bowling alley closed down over a decade ago. We're going on a second decade of waiting for something to be built there. And for you to just stop this project after it still meets everything and put us through another 5 to 10 years is infuriating.
Thank you for your comments this evening, Mimi. your time is up, but we appreciate you joining us. Ms. Chan, any other comments from the public this evening?
Thank you, Chair. No, hang on one second. Somebody just raised their hand. Speaker Minane Jameson, please unmute yourself.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You're on with the Planning Commission and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, well, I won't even need the 3 minutes, but thank you. I appreciate hearing this item. I share a lot of the same concerns as Mimi Bauer. It has been a very long time that we've lived with this closed bowling alley that continues to fall apart. As you know, it's even it's gotten worse because of the fire. And there is a long history here. The bowling alley, my recollection is it closed around 2004. And I can still remember after it closed and there was a for sale sign on the corner of Industrial Mission, I would call the broker number on the sign asking if there was any progress and in finding a buyer. And occasionally there was some interest, but typically it faded quickly. And that was during a period of time when the housing, the building craze was just really soaring. I mean, we're talking 2005 to 2008. And then, of course, we had the recession. Things fell apart. But then for the last, maybe 10 years, 8 years, again, the building craze has taken off, and nothing really happened until Mr. Rich's company came along and proposed this project. And like Mimi said, we did work closely with the developer. They were very nice reaching out to us. We recommended some things we really wanted. I think it's a difficult corner. There's a slope. There's a lot of challenges with the roads being very, when the economy is doing well, traffic gets backed up for half a mile or more. So it's a difficult corner. And so it'll be interesting to see how these 72 units do with all the added traffic and the commercial end of it. But, we welcome the project because it is a beautiful project and we know development will take place there. I appreciate what Mr. Kirby and Ms. Aguilar say about the need for more housing, particularly high density and low income. But I know there's so many areas in Hayward along Mission that's still up for grabs. And I think there's opportunities there. And like Mimi said, so far we've welcomed a lot of affordable housing along Mission, both north and south of this project. So I just want to add that, or just say that I support the project. I appreciate the planning staff, their most recent modifications. I think those will be good. And I just look forward to this project finally happening. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Jameson.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Chan, do we have any other members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Thank you, Chair. That was the last speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now close public comments on this item, and we will proceed to commissioner discussion.
Mr. Chair, I had my hand raised, but it wasn't seen. This is Glenn Kirby, the other appellant.
Okay, well, Glenn, let's go ahead and open up the public comment section for you. Sorry about that oversight. And we'll give you 3 minutes to address the commission. Your time starts now.
I appreciate that they allow me to make my comments separately. As mentioned, I'm Glenn Kirby. I live here in Fairway Park. And I have to say, I've been in the situation you're in. I've sat in the chair that you're sitting in. I served on the zoning board and the planning commission for 8 years before moving to the Alameda County Planning Commission, where I served for 12 years, including 3 years as chair. And I appreciate your service and dedication to the city. you do have the ability to influence policy by your comments and by your actions. And so I'm hoping that we can look at this project and look to the future as how we move ahead in these times. So you listen to the applicants in the community and weigh the comments against the broader plans and policies of the city. In this case, it's the priority development area around the South Hayward BART and the designation of this property as sustainable mixed use. We're not going to reach our goals in these plans if you're willing to permit a development at 18 units per acre on land that is zoned between 17.5 and 35. And we won't meet our housing needs if you continue to allow developers to pay in lieu fees rather than meeting their obligation to provide their share of affordable units. Housing in urban transit zones needs to be closer to the upper limits of the density, and it needs to include actual units, affordable housing. For South Hayward to thrive and to become more sustainable, we need a density and variety of housing that will support neighborhood businesses and the people who work in those businesses, a broader mix of homes for all family types, including families for teachers, public servants, city clerks, owners of small family operated businesses, and all of those people that we would like to see living in our community. So I think that it is justified to reopen this project for review and for the staff to go back and try to work with the developer. We're not trying to throw this project up in the air. We want to work with a very willing developer who's already committed to this parcel to seek a modest increase in the density of number of units and to meet the goals of the general plan and the obligations of the city to provide housing under transit, near transit for a broader economic base and help make this community where I live more sustainable and healthier. So I'm just hoping that you'll take this opportunity where we do have this window to look at the potential we have here to meet some of the broader goals and not just have a project that is at the bare minimum of what's allowed. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We don't see any other hands, so we are going to now close the public comment period for this. Thank you all for all of you who wrote in and for those of you who joined us this evening to provide your comments. We'll move on now to commissioner discussion on this topic. So commissioners, please raise your hand if you wish to make a comment or have any discussion on this topic, and we'll start with Commissioner Faria.
Thank you. I've been involved in this project since the beginning, when it was first presented. And I too wanted to echo the comments made by the community and Fairway Park. Mr. Rich and his company has been very, very accommodating. And he and his company took into account the comments and the concerns of the council, the planning commission, as well as the community. There were, as brought up previously, we suggested that the orientation of the buildings be a focus towards the golf course, since it was such a nice layout. He did it. We talked about the restaurant and needing some traffic barriers. He did it. And so it is something that I think that we need to look forward, and I can appreciate the feedback of Ms. Aguilar and Mr. Kirby. And as a member of the Planning Commission, that's been one of the concerns I think I can speak to, that we have wanted to get more affordable housing. And we have influenced policy because there were previously mostly all our projects were in lieu fees. And now we're getting more projects that incorporate low-income housing for various units. And we're still looking to make improvements there, so we have more units available in all of the developments that are coming forward. But at the time that this particular project came forward, the in lieu fees were in effect. And so Mr. Rich and his company took that particular alternative. So from my perspective, I feel that we should deny the appeal and uphold the decision of the planning director as presented in the staff recommendation.
So Commissioner Faria, are you making a motion?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Commissioner Patton?
Yes. I would like to, first of all, start out by saying to the appellant, also to the last speaker, public speaker, that I don't disagree with anything that you stated in your presentation. This is an incredible opportunity site for the city of Hayward. Industrial and Mission, are you kidding me? This is a high-profile corner. I would love to see something tall and dense and including all types of housing, including affordable housing. So if this were a blank slate and we were looking at this project as a new project, I'm singing in the choir. I definitely don't agree with anything that was said from the appellant's perspective. The problem is that's not what's before us tonight. This is the classic reason why the legislature amended the Subdivision Map Act and provided the whole process of establishing the vesting map provisions. And so with that being said, I asked the appellant to address the statutory findings and indicate why you felt that the planning director erred in her decision. And while you said in your summary that you had, you really didn't address any of those issues in your presentation. And so, in my opinion, the appellant has not met their test at all in this particular case. The only issue before us is whether the decision by the planning director was appropriate given the statutes, and I believe that her decision was correct. The only thing that I would ask is I really just philosophically have an issue with trying to do land use by deed restriction. And so I have an issue with the condition B of the amended condition, the developer proposed condition. And if the maker of the motion would consider deleting part B of that condition related to that deed restriction, that would be my only ask. Thank you.
Commissioner Faria, are you amenable to that friendly amendment to your motion?
Yes.
All right, Commissioner Patton, did you second the motion?
I did not second the motion.
Okay. Is there a second for the motion, and then we'll continue the discussion?
I second the motion.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Stevens. Commissioner Stevens, do you have comments you want to make?
Yes, thank you. I just like to go back to the wonderful presentation last February 13th that Sarah and her staff put on regarding encouraging development in Hayward. And I'd like to talk a little bit about what the feedback that they received from the market rate developers. One of the 9 items was that, developers really want a definitive obligation and more upfront certainty. And we all know that developing housing in the Bay Area is very expensive. Developing on a contaminated site even complicates it further. And, housing and building is basic economics. In order for a developer to build, they have to be able to get something out of it. And I think this is kind of the reason why our general plan and other guiding documents offer a range so that we can find a proper balance behind the economic realities that we live in and the type of housing that we're seeking. So I really think that this appeal, if it was granted, would really create a bad precedent in the development community in Hayward. And I think it would really hurt and maybe encourage developers to go on to other communities that are more embracing. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Commissioner Roche.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Stevenson's comments. I think you're right that developers need, a really strong guidance on this. And I think one of the frustrations we've all had is, I think in lieu fees versus building costs, maybe need to come a little bit more in line so that we don't remain unsatisfied that we're not getting, we don't always get affordable units in some of the projects we'd like to see. And I appreciate the appellant's impassioned plea for this, but I don't think this is the right project to bring this up now. There was so much work done between the city and the community and the developer. And I think all of that was done in good faith. And no one knew how long this was going to take to deal with all of the sort of environmental issues. And so, and I think this would be a really exciting project, a really exciting gateway to South Hayward. There is a lot of housing going up along Mission Boulevard. And I think the Fairway Park Neighborhood Association is right that they've been part of, the local community has been part of seeing other affordable housing units come in. So I think there was just sort of a lot of nuanced work that went into this to get here. And I think the community needs to see this project go forward. I don't live too far, and it's a real hazardous place now. And you know, just an eyesore, of course. And I think this would add something to the neighborhood that's really been missing for a long time. And so I support the project and support the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Roche. Commissioner Andrews?
I actually have another question for the appellant, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I know in the packet we received that it was a statement that the affordability crisis wasn't present in 2017. And according to research, affordability crisis happened in 2016, and I would argue even earlier in the Bay Area. So if we had all these community meetings and community outreach meetings from the developer, what was brought up in regards to affordable housing then, and how come it's coming up now? I understand it's coming up now because of, you know, things I advocate for, and you want to see more a variety of incomes in terms of housing product. But Bay Area has been expensive for a very long time. And I want to know if this was brought up during the community meetings, if you lived in the community, if you were part of that community, did you bring it up?
Well, Commissioner Andrews, I did bring it up to several council members at that time individually. As I said previously, I had worked on the golf course housing, and I was the lone voice on that task force for some multiple types of housing, for higher density housing, a mix on the golf course. You see what we got. Mm-hmm. So on this property, I was talking to several of the council members. A few of them are not now on the council. Al Mendel is on the council. Mm-hmm. And they all just said no.
Did you talk to the Fairway Park Housing Association? Did you talk to the task force here about it? Or did you only talk to the council members?
No, because we had, first of all, I wasn't aware of the meetings. I don't know why they didn't, I mean, I guess it was the executive board, and then they said they reached out to the community, but right now I cannot recall any getting notice of any meeting on this project to my home. But I knew, I had an idea it was going on, but I didn't get any notice. So I didn't attend. I may have been out of town. I don't know. But I have dealt with the neighborhood association. I knew where I stood with them, and I was hoping that I could get some support for the council, from the council at that time, to say, yes, we would be open to putting low-income housing on that property. I did not get any encouragement, and therefore I let it go till now, when I saw, different council members, several different planning commission members, maybe we have a chance at getting some low-income housing on that property now, especially with everything that's going on in our community. And that's why I did it. It was a long shot. I knew where I stood, chances wise, maybe 95 to 5%, but I couldn't let it go without a discussion, without giving our elected officials, and I hope it will go to the council because I want to give them a chance to say no. Yes, we understand the predicament of the developer. He's a nice guy, and he worked well with the Fairway Group, which didn't even bring up low-income housing. I mean, that issue was never raised. I can guarantee that. I can guarantee that was never raised. But we as public officials also have an obligation to the community right now. And this is a prime property. And so that's why I say I have a long history with this group and these properties here in Fairway Park. I know their perspectives. And as long as it's, down on Mission, north of Mission, south of Mission, but don't put it on this property right near us, is what I hear all the time from them. And so I gave it my best shot. You guys do what you are going to do, but, I couldn't let it go. We couldn't let it go. We couldn't let it go. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate your advocacy, and I agree that it's unfortunate that inclusionary housing wasn't brought forth on this project. And I know, and I should disclose, I did speak to the developer, and I also spoke to Mimi Bauer and Minane Jameson regarding the project, because I wanted to hear more background information on the project, but I did not disclose any way that I would vote or anything like that. So I just want to put that on record. But I did not, when this project came, I really struggled because I really want to see more inclusionary housing as part of the development. And it sounds like, especially after hearing from Commissioner Faria tonight, there has been a transition in what we are demanding out of developers. And I know there was an affordability crisis back then, and it's unfortunate it wasn't picked up then, but we do have opportunities that we have approved. So I'm very happy that the resident, Ms. Bauer, recognized that we did approve meta housing, and that is
You're on mute, Commissioner Andrews.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I wanted to say, I don't know if you heard the first part, but I wanted to say that I did meet with Doug, Rich, and you heard that part? Great. Okay, thanks. So what I wanted to say is I think it's an unfair criticism of this neighborhood association to call them NIMBYs, because NIMBYs means not in my backyard. And they have definitely approved or reviewed or at least consider projects that do have low income, affordable housing in their projects. So I definitely want to give kudos to this association, because I think this could have, I've never seen a project that had 40 letters of support for housing to come into their neighborhood. So I just want to acknowledge the association for being progressive in that sense. I am disappointed it doesn't have an inclusionary component, just because that is what we hope to see in the future, but it also reminds us that the ordinance is not strong enough to require that out of our developers. I do agree with the other commissioners' comments that we do set a dangerous precedent if we change the rules, and it does, if we reject projects that meet our existing code, and if we do want to have a more stringent code when it comes to inclusionary housing, it's going to really turn off developers if they don't know which rules they're going to follow. So I do have some concerns about us rejecting a project because things change midstream. So I do have a question also for legal. Technically, if this project meets the codes now, we can't technically reject this, right? Isn't that the law? Like it's still very confusing for me that we can have this review of a project, but we still can't reject it if they meet all our codes.
Yes, Commissioner Andrews, I think you are alluding to, say, an SB 330 application. So if this development project right now came in fresh and it met the density requirements, which it does, the city couldn't deny the project because it's a housing development under SB 330 if it was a new project. So it stands to reason that, you're correct. Meeting the density now, it's not really an issue that would objectively be something that you could deny the project based on, since it meets our standards. If those standards are too low, then that's an issue to take up with City Council on changing those standards for the future.
Mm-hmm. So I thank you. So I would suggest for Mr. Kirby and Mr. Aguilar to keep advocating for changing the laws and keep pushing for affordable housing to be part of projects. But I feel like the association they have approved these projects, and the developers worked with the association. They've worked with the community. They've done a lot of community outreach. And I just know that for future projects, I would definitely want to see an inclusionary component. But this project, I feel like we've approved a lot of projects, especially on Mission, that have that component. And so we should definitely, we should definitely consider that we really should have included inclusionary housing at the beginning. And unfortunately, I probably have to support this project based off what I heard tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Andrews. Commissioner Goldstein, the floor is yours. I believe you are one of the only commissioners that are still with us now that were a part of the initial approval. So we would love to hear your comments.
Yeah, that's right, Chair Bonilla. So back in 2017, we actually had this identical discussion about, and in fact, from Mr. Kirby and Ms. Aguilar on exactly the same topic. And in those discussions, we all agreed that in theory, we should be adding more density. But I think at the time, because of the very, very vocal and popular support that the project had garnered by that time, that we were going to go with what the majority of the community seemed to prefer, which is exactly the plan that we have in front of us right now. Now, I know what it feels like to be the lone voice. I've been that person myself many times, and I just want to say to Mr. Kirby and Ms. Aguilar, I appreciate, and I think I speak on behalf of the entire Planning Commission, we all appreciate you taking your time and putting your thoughts together and coming to the meeting and speaking your mind about this, and especially with the passion that you have. And I assure you, we are all equally passionate about bringing forth the right kind of housing mix that will allow sustainability, affordability, keeping families together, multi-generational families staying together, and erasing some of the old-fashioned way of segregating our communities and actually making it more inclusive. So that is my personal promise to you, that we're working on that. And as part of that promise, I have spoken directly with several of the current council members and have expressed those views that there are some changes that we still need to make in terms of the size of the units, the number of units, making it preferable for builders to build the units and not pay the in lieu fees. And I really have to thank you for that, because out of that 2017 meeting and subsequent conversations that you and I have had, that really did help shape my thinking about inclusiveness and affordability. So thank you for that. However, the project that's in front of us is, we don't have any legal grounds to deny the applicant moving forward with this. And so for those reasons, I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Goldstein. You know, I've struggled with this one, you know, for a while, but I also, you know, I appreciate the appellants and their passion and everything that they said. I could not agree more. For those of you who know me, I'm very passionate about low income, affordable housing, inclusive housing, and really a housing mix that serves everybody. If I had the opportunity to be on this commission in January, I'm not sure how I would have voted for this project, but I know I would have been pushing density and affordability and inclusionary housing on this particular piece of parcel. I think it's the perfect land for that. So I couldn't agree more with what the appellants are saying. However, when I was, you know, going through the packet of materials in preparation for tonight's meeting, you know, the decision was really of the planning director was made with two considerations in mind. The first was, you know, what is the cause of the delay for the building, and then whether the proposal is in conformance with existing development regulations. And I think the answer, you know, we understand the delays, they're very relevant. And we also have agreed that the project does meet the current requirements, regulations, and rules. And it was unanimously approved by the commission back in January of 2017. So, you know, like I said, I totally agree that we need to keep pushing for affordability and a good housing mix. It has to be something that we push for because our community needs it. We need to have a broader mix of housing, so we'll continue to push for that as well. So I think we're very much aligned with the sentiments of what the appellant shared tonight. However, as I had mentioned, because we understand the delays and the delays are very relevant, and because it still meets the requirements, there's really not a basis for me to disagree with the planning director's decision for this extension. So I too will be supporting the motion. So with that, we're not going to have any more comments on this because I don't see any more hands raised. We have a motion and we have a seconder. The motion was made by Commissioner Faria, seconded by Commissioner Stevens. The motion includes the removal of the condition that Commissioner Patton had spoken about. And now we will go ahead and ask Ms. Chan to do a roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to confirm Patton's friendly amendment is to delete Part B of the deed restriction. Is that correct?
That's correct, Ms. Chan.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner Andrews.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Faria.
Yes.
Commissioner Goldstein.
Yes.
Commissioner Patton.
Yes.
Commissioner Roche.
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
Chair Bonilla.
With a heavy heart, yes.
Thank you.
So it looks like that has unanimously passed with 7 A votes and 0 no votes. So motion passes and we'll move on to the next piece of business this evening, which is a public hearing for a proposed multifamily residential development with 27 townhome-styled condominiums and 18 apartment units on a vacant 1.12-acre infill site located at 21659 Mission Boulevard, requiring approval of a vesting tentative tract map number 8520 and a site plan review and density bonus. And we will go ahead and hear from staff related to this report. So staff report, Marcus, is it you?
Yes, hello, commissioners. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen, my presentation. All right. All right, is that visible to the commission?
Yes, it is.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Marcus Martinez, Associate Planner with the City of Hayward. The item before you tonight is a site plan review, vesting tentative tract map, and density bonus application for proposed multifamily residential development on Mission Boulevard. To provide some context on the project site is located in the form-based code area in the North Hayward neighborhood, approximately 600 feet northwest of the Sunset and Montgomery Mission intersections, depending on where you measure from. As we zoom into the project site consists of one parcel with a double frontage along Mission Boulevard as well as Montgomery Street, located at 21659 Mission Boulevard. The site is currently a vacant infill site with a gross lot area of 1.12 acres. The project site is also located in the Urban General MBT41H zone of the Mission Boulevard Corridor Form-Based Code area, with a corresponding general plan land use designation of sustainable mixed use. It is important to note that this project was deemed complete prior to the adoption of our more recent Mission Boulevard Code and is subject to the former zoning district development standards. To provide a brief overview of the project, the applicant is seeking approval of several applications, including a site plan review application for the overall development, a vesting tentative tract map for the subdivision of the property, and lastly, a density bonus application to allow for increased density and development concessions, given that the project includes on-site affordable units. The project scope includes the proposed construction of a multifamily residential development consisting of a total of 45 dwelling units. The proposed construction of a multifamily residential development, this project is unique as it includes different residential product types and tenure types, specifically 18 apartments that are intended as rentals and 27 townhome style condominiums intended for ownership. As mentioned before, the project includes a subdivision to create airspace rights for the condo units and a separate parcel for the apartment building. The proposed development will also include common open space amenities, including a community lawn area, children's playground, vegetable garden, and rooftop deck. All this combined with the related site improvements such as on and off-site landscaping, parking, and stormwater management infrastructure. Regarding the overall site design and circulation, the project includes two distinct components for the townhomes and the apartments. The development as a whole will include a total of 6 buildings, 5 of which will be for the townhomes, with either 5 or 6 condominium units per building, and the remaining building will be for the apartments. The townhome portion of the development will maintain access to the site via Montgomery Street, with a 2-way driveway that will lead to the surface parking lot for these units. Centrally located, there will be a children's playground, community vegetable garden, community lawn area, and bicycle parking. And this portion of the development will include a total of 24 automobile parking spaces, with 2 of which that will be compliant with the ADA. It is important to note that this project site is located within the form-based code area, where instead of our minimum parking standards, there are maximum parking standards established instead. In this zoning district, the maximum parking allowed for ownership units is 2 spaces per unit, which this project complies with. Focusing a little bit more on the apartment building, this portion of the development will include a 4-story structure with ground level parking and residential units on the 2nd through 4th floors. The affordable unit will be a 2-bedroom unit on the 2nd floor, measured at 888 square feet, which is one of the larger sizes compared to the other units within the building. The portion of the development will be accessed along Mission Boulevard with via a 2-way driveway that will lead to the podium parking level. This development will include amenities such as a bicycle storage room with capacity up to 20 bicycles, a lobby area with a secured mail storage area, and a rooftop deck for the use of the residents. Similar to the townhome portion, this portion of the development is also located in the form-based code area, where it has a maximum parking ratio of 1.75 spaces per rental unit. Given that this section proposes 11 parking spaces, including 1 ADA space, the project complies with the parking standards set forth in our code. The slide shown on the screen displays a conceptual project rendering of the development, including the townhomes and the apartment building. Please note that these do not include the site landscaping that will further enhance the frontages and overall site design. As you see, the project includes a modern color palette of robust orange and shades of blue, with a mix of fiber cement siding, smooth cement plaster finishes, and metal awnings and railings to create a contemporary design aesthetic. The site design and different product types were intentional to keep the lower intensity scale structures, aka the townhomes, along Montgomery Street, and the more intense compact form along Mission Boulevard. The city's affordable housing ordinance requires new housing projects restrict 6% of their rental units for on-site affordability and 10% for ownership projects, or alternatively pay an in lieu fee. For this project, the minimum requirement to comply with the affordable housing ordinance is a total of 0.83 units, which is rounded up to 1 whole unit for the apartments, and 2.7 units, which is rounded up to 3 whole units for the condominiums. As shown on the slide, the applicant has proposed to restrict 1 rental unit at very low income and 3 condominium units for moderate income households. As mentioned previously, the project includes a density bonus. A density bonus is a zoning tool granted through state law that allows for an increase in density with certain concessions and or incentives when affordable units are incorporated into developments on site. 4 of the 39 base units on this project will be restricted for either very low income or moderate income households, and these restricted units overlap with the requirements of the affordable housing ordinance to satisfy both, thus allowing the project to exceed the maximum density with a 15% increase for a total of 45 units. State density bonus law requires cities to grant concessions and incentives if they result in actual cost reduction for the project. With respect to the proposed development, the applicant is requesting 2 concessions be granted: to reduce the required common open space from 15% of the net lot area to 8%, and to propose 1 additional floor on the apartment building beyond the 3-story maximum. The diagram on the slide shows the distribution and location of the affordable units on the site, including the location of the bonus units as well. As you see, there will be 3 townhome style condominium units that will be reserved for moderate income households, and 1 unit in the apartment building on the 2nd floor that will be reserved for very low income. In accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA, the project is deemed categorically exempt per section 15332 of the CEQA guidelines, which is a class 32 exemption for infill development, and thus no additional environmental review is required. Further analysis on the project exemption is included within attachment 2 of the staff report. Staff believes that the project embodies sustainable planning principles to focus infill development within proximity of transit corridors and services. These types of developments aim to reduce reliance on automobile use, which in turn curbs local and regional congestion and greenhouse gas emissions by promoting walking, biking, and the use of public transit to the greatest extent possible, especially as this project is only 3/4 of a mile from the Hayward BART station via Montgomery Street, which is a designated bike route. This project will also further alleviate the housing crisis we are experiencing here in Hayward and the rest of the state, and will assist us in meeting our housing unit goals for the city's regional housing needs allocation, especially for the missing moderate income households. In addition, the project aligns with the intent of the general plan designation and the form-based code area. With that, staff recommends to the Planning Commission approval of the site plan review, vesting tentative map and density bonus applications based on the required findings and subject to the attached conditions of approval. This concludes staff's presentation, and staff is available for any questions. I'm also accompanied by our housing manager, Christina Morales, in case there's any questions related to affordable housing component of this development. In addition, the property owner, project architect, and project civil engineer are also on the call should the commission have any questions for them as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcus. Great presentation, as always. From the applicant, is there any, or the owner, is there any comments you'd like to make before we open it up for commissioner questions?
I'm the applicant representing the owner, and I have a few prepared comments, if now is a good time to do that.
Yes, please.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Eric Waterman, and I'm with Studio KDA. I have been working closely with Pargat Alak, the owner, Greenwood and Moore, the civil engineers, and Billy Ryan, the landscape architect, to develop this project. We have been in close consultation with Marcus Martinez and the Hayward Planning Department to ensure that we put forth the best possible project. The site is unusual in that it faces both the busy commercial area along Mission Boulevard and the quieter residential neighborhood along Montgomery Avenue. These 2 different conditions required different architectural solutions. Along Mission Boulevard, it made sense to locate the higher density 4-story apartment building. The lobby entrance is marked by a feature wall with plantings to create a welcoming entrance along the curve of the road. The exterior materials and colors have been selected to create interest and variation on the facades and to create a unique identity for the building. The plans for the dwelling units provide natural sunlight to all the rooms and a shared outdoor roof deck, which will be a featured amenity. A large secure bike room will encourage residents to drive less. Along Montgomery Avenue, the individual townhomes reflect the more residential neighborhood. The townhomes share the same materials and color palette as the apartment building, but they are expressed differently. The townhomes along the edge of the site have ground floor plans which allow access from both the exterior and the interior of the site, and in a sense can function as a plan with 2 front doors. The angled roofs of the townhomes are oriented to the south for better solar exposure for PV panels. The community-oriented common space includes a playground, a shared garden, and an open lawn, and is located in the heart of the site and directly in line with the main entrance, which will help keep the common space active. The landscape design will provide a beautiful environment for the residents and make a positive contribution to the neighborhood. The choice of plants have been selected for their sustainability, water needs, and their ability to thrive with minimal maintenance. We've spent a lot of time studying many possible design ideas and plan configurations for the site and have worked hard to best address all the constraints and requirements. The project offers a thoughtful housing solution for this site and includes much needed inclusionary housing for the city of Hayward. We hope that you will vote in favor of the project tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. All right, now we will go ahead and ask if the commissioners have any questions for staff or for Mr. Waterman, who is with us this evening. All right, Commissioner Roche, it looks like you're the first to raise your hand, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Let's see, I had a few questions. One was the traffic study that was done, was that, I noticed that it was done when you were considering, when it was the original allowed units on the property. So it looked like the 12 units for the apartment. And I'm just wondering if you updated that after you considered the density bonus, the added units. You know, just because it's a pretty busy, Mission's pretty busy anyway. So I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, well, we didn't increase the number of parking spaces. So since that stayed the same, we didn't change the traffic study.
Okay, but considering potentially like on-street parking and people coming and going still to this property.
Yeah, we did not.
Okay. And then, so I guess my other question for staff then along the same lines, and we've talked about this before, that, you know, I mean, so we're now talking 18 units and we're not even going to have one space per unit for the apartments and not one space per unit, at least for the townhouses. And I know that, you know, we're trying to push, you know, people to get out of their cars. And this is, like you said, within a quarter mile of BART. But, you know, it's a pretty busy street and I still, you know, see a problem that we're still adding more parking to streets. I mean, that's going to be inevitable for the local neighborhood to see more parking on the street from, you know, this will be a pretty dense property with 2-unit apartments and, I mean, the 3-story townhouses. So I'm just wondering what you're considered. Have you talked to the neighborhoods? Have you talked to people around there? What's being considered for what we know will be an increase in parking on the streets?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back on one of the comments you had made earlier. Just for clarification purposes, there was not a traffic study prepared for this, just given the type of units and the number of units that were proposed per the trip generation manual, if you will, from the Institute of Traffic Engineers. It just didn't generate enough PM trips that would warrant a traffic analysis. I think what you're generally referring to is just the on-site circulation and the plan of it. That being said, with respect to parking and respect to public comments in general, at this point in time, we've only received, I believe, 2 comments from the community. We haven't really received any opposition or any opposition documented at this point in time from the community. I understand that there may be concerns about parking, but with respect to what our development standards are and meeting our code, it does meet that as given that we do have maximum parking standards. I think what we're trying to really capitalize on this project site is it is only 3/4 of a mile away from the Hayward BART station, and it has the benefit of having a Montgomery frontage, which is a straight shot to the Hayward BART station.
Okay. And then along those lines, is the applicant looking at a marketing plan for potential owners and tenants that won't have cars? You know, what is being done proactively to get people in there that don't have cars?
Well, we've offered as much possible bike parking as we can beyond what is required. We also are along a bike lane on Montgomery, and as Mission Boulevard gets revamped, that will also, I understand, have a bike lane. So it's, you know, there's also changing car ownership trends going on that we hope to capitalize on and encourage other forms of transportation than private car ownership.
Yeah, and is there anything done proactively to talk to car share companies or scooter companies that might have a station there, or something proactively, like I said, to not make this a real neighborhood problem with more cars in the street?
I hear you, and I think that's we haven't yet, but we will definitely do that. I appreciate your input on that.
Okay, and then the other thing was the townhouse frontage on Montgomery. It said, I think in the report that it would sort of blend well with the neighborhood, but I'm not sure about that. It's really angular. It's very modern looking. The houses that it would face are, there's cottage style and ranch style houses over there, and they're older. Just wondering what the process was to, for the design of those houses to sort of fit a little bit more into the neighborhood.
I think part of it was to have a design that worked well with the townhomes that was different. There are the smaller single family resident homes along Montgomery there, and there's also a few apartment buildings that are very square and some setback and everything like that. So it was sort of a mix between the single family homes that we saw and then the more blocky apartment buildings that are across the street.
Okay, and then thank you. And I also wanted to ask about the, you're asking for the density bonus to go from 50 for the common space to go from 15% to 8%. And I was wondering, are you including in that 8% the rooftop patio that you're talking about for the apartments? And then I think you also said that there was going to be some backyard space for some of the townhouses. Is that included in the 8%, or is the 8% the common areas where the park is and the field?
The 8%.
I'll take that one. Okay. The rooftop is included within that 8%, as well as the common, the central courtyard, if you will, with the community lawn, playground, and everything. The one thing, unfortunately, that our previous form-based code that this project is subject to, it doesn't really give developers credit for providing private open space. And with respect to that, this project is doing a decent amount of that. Some of the townhome units will be able to have more of a private backyard and or private balconies, but unfortunately through the lens of compliance within our development standard doesn't really give credit to the developer for providing those. It really focuses on the common open space areas.
Okay, and then my final, I'm sorry, commissioners, I just wanted to get all my questions out. My final question just goes to the sort of balance of, so there's going to be the 4 units, and then we're asking for the increased density to provide the affordable units on site, which I'm really glad about and excited that you're choosing that step to build housing as our previous item. We talked a lot about wanting to see built units on site for developments. But I'm just wondering, and this is more of a staff question, that so if they include, I think is 1 unit, and then for that you get a bonus of 6 units or something like that. And I'm wondering the calculation, like how, is that a really, if we're going to do 1 unit and then they can build a whole other story, the developers get to build a whole other story to get revenue from 4 or 6 other units, what the balance is there?
Are you I just want to clarify the question. Is the question like, how are the proportions defined based on how many affordable units you're providing on site versus the bonus that they correspondingly receive? Is that the question?
Yeah, because I guess my concern is there is going to be the one extra unit in the apartment complex, but for that, there's going to be a whole other story to this apartment complex. And that, of course, increases the density, which I get. But I'm just wondering the balance there, like if that's a sort of like, I don't know, fair balance, and, to add, because we're adding more density, we're going to have less common space. And I'm just kind of trying to, in my head, sort of picture it. And I don't know exactly what I'm asking. Just sort of that sort of like how much it costs to build a unit versus how much revenue they're going to get from the extra units they're getting credit for to build that one unit.
It seems like the density bonus is access, right, is what you're getting at, right? They're going to build one additional unit or they're going to make one affordable, and then they're getting access to build a whole nother, floor. So it's just, Marcus, what she's getting at?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think what I want to bring clarity to that, and please, Commissioner Roche, correct if I'm wrong, is it's not exclusively the one rental unit that's going to be at very low income that's providing an additional floor. It's that combined with the developer's option to also reserve 3 moderate townhomes as well. So that combined bonus from them two combined gives them a total of 6 bonus units on the site. So it's not you provide one very low rental and you get it's like 6 additional units. They're actually providing much more. They're providing 4 of the full 45, which is giving them a corresponding bonus of 6 additional units. And the idea and kind of the intent behind state density bonus laws to give the developer as much flexibility as they need and additional units to really subsidize and offset the cost of providing those affordable units on site.
Okay, thank you. I'm done. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner Roche. All very good questions, so thank you for asking those. Commissioner Andrews?
Yes, Commissioner Roche actually asked a couple of the questions I was going to ask, but I did have a question about the configuration for the very low affordable. Is there a reason why, and I definitely appreciate having the inclusionary affordable housing as part of the project, but just wanted to compare our RHNA goals of what we need to meet our RHNA goals versus what this project is presenting, and which categories are we low in? Just want to confirm that for people who might be watching.
Yeah, I think for that particular question, I might call on our housing manager if she has that information available. What I think our RHNA numbers are, I think they're always a constant moving goalpost. I think as soon as we start making progress to it gets bumped out again annually. But if Christina Morales is available, she can speak to that.
Right. So yeah, Marcus is correct. I mean, we are low in all of the categories, and we've been doing ongoing estimates, not only of where we currently are in terms of the number of units that we have reported for our RHNA numbers based on the number of permits pulled, but estimating based on the number of units that are in the pipeline. But we're seeing, I think, deficiencies in all categories. So for the very low income category, we're estimating right now about a 47% deficiency. The low income category we're doing the best in, where we are estimating about a 21% deficiency. And then the moderate income category is where we're producing the least amount of units, where we're seeing about an 80, we're projecting an 86% deficiency. So we are, but in terms of how the units were designated, their specific income levels had to do with the requirements of the Affordable Housing Ordinance, and it's based on the tenure of the units. So the ownership units they're allowed to designate those units moderate income units, and for the rental, they have to provide both low and very low income units, splitting 6% of the units at 50% each. So in this case, if there's only one rental unit, it's designated as a very low income unit based on the ordinance.
Okay, thank you for that.
And one thing I just wanted to add, and I would ask our housing manager, Christine Morales, to correct me if I'm wrong. I think where we're given, I would have to give kudos to the developer for including moderate income household affordable units on site, just because I think from I think from a jurisdictional perspective, I think we always have a hard time fulfilling that need, just because there's a lot of tax credits and more incentives towards low and very low income, such as the meta housing development. But there's really not there's not a lot of incentives or tax credits for moderate income housing to really meet that middle. So.
Thanks for providing that additional context in terms of funding. I didn't know that moderate income wasn't receiving the same amount of funding compared to the other categories. So thank you for that. So one question I do have wanted to see, not necessarily this is going to influence my vote, but I agree with Commissioner Roche on the colors. Mission Boulevard, the developers seem to have a more neutral color palette with maybe a pop of color. And this is a stark contrast to that. So I am all in favor of things to look different, but this development is a smaller apartment building and I'm just nervous that it's gonna not flow with the rest of Mission Boulevard, with all the developments that are coming online. And would you consider changing, if we can't change the design, can we change the color palette? And then also, I'm very concerned about that wall where the address numbers are. And would you consider public art on that wall? It could be an opportunity for Mission Boulevard to have some public art, and also to tier graffiti.
We're open to studying the colors and the final look of that wall.
Okay. And then I have a question. Maybe it's for Mr. Martinez. Do you know if because there's so many developments that are coming on Mission Boulevard, is there coordination with AC Transit or some kind of transit management strategy that developers can kind of get together? Can the city shepherd that in terms of providing transit passes or something to kind of reduce some of the traffic that we're going to see from this project? I mean, I think Commissioner Roche is right that we really would like to see traffic studies, even if they're not warranted, but we should be, pushing for us to figure out how to mitigate traffic in a creative way.
Yeah, I mean, with respect to the development review of applications, when they do come in, I think at the time of application receipt, we do evaluate its surroundings and its setting. And like for this particular case, we usually will route a set of plans over to AC Transit for their review and consideration to see if they have any suggestions or whether there's opportunities for mass transit upgrades within reason and within scale of the project. For this particular project, we did not receive any comments from AC Transit. Yeah, I think to the extent that might benefit this project, I do know that the Alameda County, which has right-of-way jurisdiction in front of the project along Mission Boulevard, as Mr. Waterman said, is planning to do some bicycle improvements and putting some more bike lanes and complete streets. So that might be something more attractive to hopefully encourage folks to kind of use alternative means of transportation.
Okay. And then well, you said that there were comments that were from the community. I just want to confirm what those comments were. I didn't catch everything.
Right. Yeah. So one comment that we did receive prior to the publishing of the agenda that was included as attachments. The last attachment, which I think was attachment 7 or 6, was from the Alameda County Planning Department, essentially citing their support given the housing crisis. And then following that, after the agenda was published, I believe Mr. Stephen Dunbar, which is from Bicycle East Bay or some similar coalition, provided some comments citing his support as well.
Okay, that's okay. I remember those now. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Andrews. Good questions. Commissioner Faria.
Thank you. Commissioner Roche brought up some of the concerns that I had as well. I appreciate, Marcus, you explaining the open space accommodations with the backyards in the condominiums. Is there an HOA on that side?
Yes, as part of the development and creation and the final map process that's associated with the townhomes, there will be an HOA created that will have the responsibility for common maintenance and ownership of like the parking spaces, of the playground, of all the common areas.
Okay, great. And I do have a concern about the parking, but and I feel just driving by there, there's a lot of parking on the street already. So I think that this is going to increase that. Additionally, the open space pieces I had a concern about because there isn't a park in that neighborhood close by where someone might be able to take the children, since these are going to be family type units. And so the concern about the decrease in open space was a concern. The other thing is the stark look of the colors that were already brought up, but of the 4-story building that will be on Mission Boulevard, it will be 4 stories, and that's what you're going to see. And I think maybe if there was a rendition with some landscaping and the colors were a little bit different, it would make it more amenable. I just don't see it being welcoming and being something that introduces a good face for our city as people are driving in. And so those were the concerns that I had related to the project.
Thank you, Commissioner Faria. Any other commissioners have questions that they would like to have addressed? Okay. I'm not seeing any hands raised. The only question I had, Marcus, is can you tell us again the size of the affordable units?
Yes, so the size of the 3 townhomes individually, I believe, are in the neighborhood about 1,400 square feet, not 14,000, 1,400 square feet, and there's all 3 floors. And then the 2-bedroom apartment unit is about 888 square feet, which out of all the units in the apartment building, it's actually the biggest. There are other units in the apartment building that are also equivalently 888 square feet, but it's larger than the other ones.
Yeah, that's pretty great because, you know, usually the projects that we see is the affordable gets put on the side somewhere and it's like the 1-bedroom. So that's really great. Thank you
for this one. It's either equivalent in size completely or it's larger.
That's fantastic. You know, Marcus, though, I was thinking about just the reality of people getting out of their cars, you know, and when I drove by this, you know, this property myself, the only thing I saw everywhere were like car lots, you know, and then like next door, there's like a place to get your car fixed, right? So I'm like, well, you know, they're selling cars next door and around the way and they're fixing cars and all this kind of stuff. And then we're like, but we're building this development for like not to have cars. So, you know, just how, I guess, how do you guys plan to encourage or incentivize people to not use their cars? And then I'm thinking, you know, when you were talking about BART, you know, what are the projections on BART and ridership and COVID and safety and all of that kind of stuff? Because, you know I'm not trying to get on a BART train these days. So what's the reality of, you know, this whole transportation management plan that's, you know, being put in place to mitigate or, you know, this demand for cars and then furthermore incentivize, you know, folks to want to be interested in this when they can't bring their car? And they live right on Mission Boulevard. I mean, what a perfect place to get on, you know, get in your car and go somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, Commissioner Minane, I don't have a great answer for you. I think the trend just needs to start somewhere. And I mean, we hope that the bicycle improvements both to Montgomery and Mission Boulevard will really draw folks that understand that they might not have a parking space at this site and just need to have the ability and flexibility to explore other options. I mean, I think that's all we can say. I think we just need to see where the trends go and if this catches on and people are more incentivized to use non-single occupancy vehicles as their main form of transit.
So how do we plan to like incentivize people though to do that? Like, is the rent going to be cheaper because you don't have a car, or like, I mean, how does or not? Is it just going to be what it is?
That could be one way. I mean, that's not something I don't believe we can necessarily impose as a condition that they have received cheaper rent. But realistically, like land is money, and if someone doesn't have a parking space, they might have cheaper rent. I think that would be up to the developer or their property management company to develop a plan that really incentivizes folk to not use cars or use their parking spaces.
Yeah, because if we're not incentivizing them, they're going to spill onto the street. You know, when I go and try to grab a burrito over at the La Piñata on the corner, there sometimes you can't even find a parking, right? So it's going to be really important to make sure that there's that program to really mitigate this. Otherwise, it's just going to spill all over Mission Boulevard, and it's going to, you know, just run through this neighborhood. And then this letter we got from the Alameda County Community Development Agency, the planning department, it says, you know, they encourage the city to consult with Alameda County Transportation Commission to coordinate traffic management strategies. You know, do you plan to do that?
So that was something we coordinated. We spoke with, we did speak with ACTC, and I spoke with ACTC, and I've also reached out to the County of Alameda, and that's where they were mentioning kind of their already capital improvement plans that they were doing along Mission Boulevard.
All right. Well, thank you, Marcus.
Of course.
Let's go ahead and open this up to public comments now. So if there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand. And our lovely Ms. Chan will facilitate this public comments portion. So Ms. Chan, over to you.
Sorry, you're out. To speak and you are using the Zoom application, please click the raise hand button. If you are dialing in, press *9 to raise your hand on the phone and use the *6 to unmute yourself when called to speak. If you are streaming the meeting through Zoom on your computer, but dialing in via phone, please mute yourself so that there is no feedback sound during the meeting. If there is disruptive feedback or excessive noise during the meeting, your audio will be disabled. Okay, so currently we have 3 hands raised. The first speaker, I am calling on Steve Dunbar. Please unmute yourself, Steve.
Good evening. You can hear me, yes?
Yes, we could.
Very good. Hi, I'm just going to jump in. I don't really have anything more per se than my email on the project itself, but just to address some concerns that were raised in the questions. As mentioned, I am a board member for Bike East Bay and an active advocate with Bike East Bay. I can assure you that the protected bike lanes that are going on Mission Boulevard are going to be of the highest quality, and they will incentivize you to bike on it because they will be safe. Going a little bit further, the sidewalks are getting improved as well, and there are going to be directed curb ramps for ADA access that are high quality, as well as nice bus bowl boarding islands as well. So those are a number of nice amenities that will make it easier. I would encourage that you, the Planning Commission and Hayward, obviously continue to be involved in bringing BRT or transit speed improvements south from San Leandro. Tempo, I went by Tempo today. It's great. Also, Montgomery behind is slated to be a bike boulevard in the near future as well, so that's good. On the idea of parking, other cities have required what's so-called parking cash out, which basically requires the developer to charge for parking. I'm not sure if it's something you can impose at this stage in this development, but it's something that the Planning Commission should be aware of and consider in other opportunities where that is the obvious incentive. You know, if you don't have the car, you get $100 a month back. I think parking spaces on the ground floor cost $50,000 to build, so there's definitely cost associated with it. I hope that was helpful. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker, I have number 968. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. You're with the Planning Commission.
Hello, I believe I'm unmuted.
Yes,
this is Dr. Ann Maris. Hi, thanks. I'm the organizer of Groveway Neighborhood Association. I'm also the chair of the My Eden Voice Parks and Open Space Committee. And this development is about 7 blocks from my home, and it's just inside the Cherryland border. I wasn't aware of it until I saw the agenda and I looked at the plans. And the main thing I noticed is that there seems to be a big disparity between the tenant apartments and the market rate homes, the owned homes, whether they're market rate or not, the owned homes. And for example, there's a gate in the middle of the development, and just living here and knowing what the neighborhood's like, I can only imagine that gate is not going to be open once people live there and, our normal crime level starts up. So I'm really concerned about the apartment dwellers having no access to the open space. We know how important open space is for mental health. We're having a lot of mental health issues now, increasingly so. And so it's really important. I heard the commissioners speaking about the lack of parks in the area, and that's really true. This is an area that's just a lot of concrete, and this puts a tall apartment building, which I think could be appropriate in this area, just right on a busy street with no access to this quiet bike corridor behind on Montgomery. So we'll have the tenants not only excluded from the open space potentially, but put out onto a busy street instead of a more calm, peaceful street. So that's, and I think there's several issues there. If you look at the plans, if you compare the owned properties versus the rented properties. I didn't see an elevator. It's a 4-story building. I don't see a lot of handicapped parking spots. There's actually a whole set of buildings separating the apartments from the open space. I did like that there was parking under the apartments. That was kind of neat. And the rooftop deck is kind of neat. I didn't notice any details on it, but things like that will add to community. And just putting in a building is not going to add to community. And the previous speaker talking about the bike paths, he's correct. County is putting in some nice pathways up until Rose, which is right where this is. So there will be improved access later, but there isn't now. And my last point is just to agree with your comments about the look of the building, the colors. I wasn't going to say anything, but since you guys started it, the colors are really bad and the design does not fit in with the neighborhood. So I am in favor of the density and the project in general, but I think something needs to be done. For example, changing the driveway so that there's equal access from the busy street to the quiet street, whether you're a tenant or an owner. I don't know how the vesting works with the HOA, since the townhouse part will be owned and the other one will be the apartment. I mean, it looks like they're really separate. So that open space is not counting for the people who need it the most. The townhouses have open space. Thank you.
Morris, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant or Marcus, do you want to address some of those comments you just heard?
Yeah, I'll address some of them. If in case I miss anything, I can defer to the applicant. But with respect to just a few of the points that I caught, within the apartment building, because it is 4 stories, it will definitely have an elevator. That is a minimum California building code requirement. And then there are 88 parking spaces that are also required for the California building code, chapter 11. With respect to residents of the apartment building that would, or whether they would be able to access the common open space requirement, that is something that we did include as condition number 16 of the draft conditions of approval that did require the recordation of a cross-access easement that gives residents of the apartments full access to the townhome units, so they can equally enjoy the amenities that are present on the site. That was something that we definitely wanted to strive for, is that way the residents of the apartments had equal access to cross over to Montgomery and access that bike lane a little bit quicker and have more of a safer trip or bike or walk towards the Hayward BART station. So that's something that was very intentional that we wanted to include in the project. I'm not sure if there's anything else I missed.
Anything, Mr. Waterman, you want to add?
I think Marcus covered the primary concerns. It's come up a number of times about the colors, and I appreciate that input, and we are open to looking into that. We've also tried to create a variety of different materials on the outside that, would have some visual interest to the building. So.
Yeah, I think you're hearing consistently both from commissioners and from the member of the public we just heard is those colors don't work. So we need to look at alternatives.
What colors do people like?
Commissioner Andrews, do you have a preference?
I was just thinking with the other developments we've seen, just more of the neutral tans and just the lighter colors. It just seems to be a little bit more welcoming on this street. We have seen some developments that have the neutral grays and tans, but then they have a pop of color that kind of, stands out a little bit to make it a landmark a little bit. But what I'm seeing here, and I've seen it on Mission Boulevard, and actually one of the previous buildings, or the previous building that will be there or is there, has like a really dark blue or dark grayish blue on Mission, and it stands out, but it's a car dealership. It's not a housing development. And I feel like a lot of people may not want to walk home to such a dark building when they go home. So that's why I've mentioned it.
Mr. Waterman, what we'll do when we move out of public comments and we go into commissioner comments, perhaps when the commissioners make their comments, if they have any preferences on colors, they can share it at that point so we can just keep moving through public comments. Ms. Chan, any additional members of the public wish to address the commission on this topic tonight?
Yes, we had 2 more speakers. Tyler Dragoni, please unmute yourself.
Hi, commissioners. My name is Tyler Dragoni. I am a resident of Ashland, Cherryland as well. And I just want to echo what Ann Maris and Commissioner Faria addressed. The nearest park is about a mile away. So that's about a 2-mile round trip for a trip to the park. And so I'm just wondering, maybe this is more of a clarification point. In the presentation, it looked like it was the open space was being reduced from 15 to 8. And why is that allowed? And why are you allowing that? As a neighboring community resident, we are all for density, but we can't sacrifice amenity as well. There's been so much talk devoted to parking. I get it and I don't at the same time, because people also need outside space to recreate and decompress, and when the air maybe is fresh again one day, smell fresh air. So I just want to just clarification, why is it being reduced from 15 to 8, and what can the commission do to have as much open space as possible in this high density development?
Thank you for your comments. Marcus, do you want to make any comments on that?
Yeah, I'll make a few comments. And again, if there's anything I'm missing, I can pass it over to Mr. Waterman, just because the applicant. I think with regard to the open space, I think it's kind of a sliding scale. We have to create a balance of where state law really precludes us from limiting the density that's allowed on the property to maintaining as many parking spaces as there are. So one alternative would be either to reduce density, which state law really doesn't let us do, or start reducing the number of parking spaces, which also isn't equivalently beneficial to the project site. So I think where, as I mentioned earlier, where the code really doesn't give benefit to the applicant or the proposed site plan is that the code really only gives credit to common open space versus some private open space amenities that are kind of present on the project site. So yeah, I mean, from an objective standpoint, it's not meeting the common open space requirement, but if you supplement some of the private open space, whether it be balconies or some of the private backyards, it kind of helps get there. And I'll leave the rest to Mr. Waterman, whether there's any other opportunities on the site.
Thanks, Marcus. I mean, to just sort of build on what you're saying, when we, began working on this, we had to weigh all of these desires to have density, to have parking, to have open space, and to have mixed types of housing. And so we have, ideally we would have, maybe more parking, but instead we've tried to encourage more biking. And so we've reduced the parking a little bit. We have about, 3,000 square feet of backyards that are not being counted at all for the space because they're not common. But each of those, the townhomes within the site all have a yard, which is a nice amenity, which they wouldn't need to have. We've also got a roof deck that is in addition to, it's counting towards the open space, but that does create a space for people to go to that, they might use instead of having to walk to a park. So we've tried to do the best balancing act that we can for all the requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Waterman.
And one additional comment, I actually forgot to touch on the main point. It's a little bit more that our hands are also tied with respect to that the project is including on-site affordability. I mean, state law is pretty explicit that we have to grant the concession if the applicant makes the justification that it does result in a cost reduction to the overall project, which makes the project pencil. So, I mean, unfortunately, I know it's not the best answer or best justification, but that's kind of the tool and the benefit that is very intentional with using a state density bonus.
Okay. Thank you, Marcus. Ms. Chan, any additional public comments this evening?
Yes, there's one more, Mr. Brian Dorward. I believe he's part of the applicant team.
Yeah, good evening, commissioners. I just wanted to respond to the comment regarding the concern for parking. Whenever you have these residential projects of high density, parking is always a concern, but I just wanted to point out that there's potentially 10 or 11 parking spaces available on the frontage on Montgomery, and then potentially, 3 additional more parking spaces on Mission.
Okay.
And I just want to let you know that I'm also available here if you have any other questions regarding this project, regarding the civil aspects.
Got it. Thank you. Any other public comments, Ms. Chan?
Chair, that was the last speaker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will go ahead and close the public comment period, and we will go to commissioner discussion on this item. Commissioner Patton, you've had your hand patiently raised, so we'll go ahead and give you the floor.
Thank you. I think this is a great project to come before us, especially in the context of the last item. Affordability is great in concept, but at the end of the day, affordability costs. So that's why the state law ultimately was changed to require us to give incentives in order to gain affordability. This project is trying to do a lot. It's infill, rather small site. We're getting both apartments and for sale housing. We're getting affordability. Sometimes the incentive is going to be parking. Sometimes it's going to be open space. Sometimes it's going to be height. Sometimes it's going to be setback. Every site and every project is going to be a little different. But I think, we have to be open to the discussion that at the end of the day, if the goal is affordability, we have to be able to be prepared to give something away and maybe realize if we're not going to get the perfect project every time. And I think that this project is within the realm of reasonability in terms of the incentives that are being requested. I do want to comment on Commissioner Faria's issues related to design. I thought also that the color palette is a little strong in the context of sort of what we're trying to do in this part of Hayward. With that being said, I don't think it's appropriate for the commission to sit here and try to have a de facto design review meeting. So I would much prefer that this issue be addressed with the commission, with the applicant, going back with staff and working on modifying the color and material palette for the project into some warmer, softer colors. I think that kind of general direction is about the best we can do in a public meeting at this point. Second, that even the design itself, I thought was for me, a little more of sort of a housing for an industrial kind of context. With sort of the look and appearance is really different from a lot of pretty much everything we're doing out along that part of Hayward. So, I would also encourage the developer to perhaps work a little bit more with staff on the overall design. But definitely the color palette, I think you should continue working on. Those are my comments.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Patton. Always so well informed, so thank you. Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the applicant for this project. I think it's a really great fit for a tough site. I'm going to go on the record in saying I actually like the colors. So for what it's worth, I kind of think that this section of Mission Boulevard could stand to be updated. I think doing something bold makes sense. I also really agree with the height of the apartments. I think the height matches the scale of Mission Boulevard. So I think that's a good fit. I like the way the townhomes fit Montgomery. I think there's proper setback to the other adjoining older homes in the area. So I think that's a good fit there. The only question I would ask or thing to think about would be the tree species that's proposed. I think it's a crepe myrtle that's on Montgomery, and I know that I think that's a city standard tree. It just seems that with the scale of that house and the type of street that is, I think a larger tree would fit that neighborhood better and possibly work better with the architecture. That's just one little comment. So thank you. I am supportive of this application.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. We appreciate those comments. Any other commissioner would like to make any comments on this item? Commissioner Goldstein.
Thank you, Chair. I think my position on the colors is more aligned with Commissioner Stevens. In the architectural design, I actually prefer that our city start to show a little pop in color and in style design. Otherwise, we kind of run the risk of everything looking like it came out of the same design factory. And I'm really not in favor of that. I like the applicant's use of materials and colors. I'm certainly not opposed to making some adjustment to it. But if I drive by there and see it look like what I often refer to as maybe surplus tan, I'm probably going to shriek. So I really prefer more of the eye-popping colors. Enough said about that. I think the applicant is really bringing to our community a project that is in much need. And I thank Marcus and the applicant for working together to deliver what we've been asking for in terms of high density and affordability. This to me really represents what I've seen in the last few years, really the pinnacle of what we've been asking for in those parts of that concept. And I also appreciate use of the rooftop to make more outdoor space available and the use of private space. I'm one of those people, when I feel like being public, I'm going to be public. And when I want privacy, I need to have my privacy. And I think you've struck a nice balance there. I do appreciate that. And then making a very sizable, lockable indoor bicycle storage really means a lot to me. It does promote people using their bikes, and the more we can do with bike lanes and proper lighting and safety, traffic calming measures and places where people can safely lock and store their bicycles, all of those things definitely contribute to alternative transportation and getting out of our cars. So I'm in favor of this project. I like it.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Goldstein. Commissioner Roche.
I just wanted to add, I definitely understand more about our constraints when it comes to, the density bonuses. So I just really want to encourage the developer to really consider a marketing plan around people without cars, whether it's move-in bonuses or doing something like, I think it was like the caller said about monetizing the, or, valuing the parking spaces, something like that to sort of really help, help us get to that carless situation. And then I also wanted to just really quick, there are no garages in the townhouses, are there? Okay. Yeah, because I just kind of wonder how that will go too, that, to own a condo and not have a parking spot. I mean, that's, it'll be interesting. And that, I would assume you would want to make that part of your marketing plan too, that it's, that you're encouraging people to own without cars. And I'd really like to see you do that. And then I wanted to say, I don't have as much of a problem with the color scheme on Mission Boulevard. For me, it was more Montgomery and the sort of industrial sort of slanted roof. I would like you to, maybe revisit that if you can with staff on making that a little bit more compatible with the older housing that's going to be looking right at it. Because to me, it does look more industrial. And then the color scheme on that side, I would like to see it softened. But that's just my 2 cents on that. It sounds like there's some mixed feelings about the colors here. And I think that's it. And then the final thing is just around the parking again, that, like Commissioner Bonilla was saying, when he went to get a taco burrito around that area and he couldn't find parking. I mean, it will become an issue with businesses if we keep dumping cars on streets and people can't park to get to attend these businesses, to frequent these businesses. I just really, encourage the city to be working with developers to come up with these marketing plans, to come up with some really strong sort of like proactive ways to get people out of the cars and on their streets, because I just don't want to see us adding more cars to this neighborhood. And then, we keep just doing this. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Roche. Any other commissioners wish to make a comment on this topic? Okay, so I was excited to see this project. Of course, I was in love with the idea of the affordable units being built on site with the size of the units. I actually liked the open space. I know it's not as much as we would want, but I thought it was a good use of the open space. I still think it's a little awkward that we're trying to, that this development is, kind of going carless, if you will, when it's in the middle of car lots everywhere. I still just find that a little ironic in my own head. But I do think that this is a very nicely designed development that has a lot of really attractive amenities. And I think it's really meeting a lot of what we've been asking for. So I too am very excited to support this project. So great job. And again, what a great example for how we could build in affordability into these communities. I know it's probably tough, but this is a really good example that we want to encourage other developers to follow. So thank you, Mr. Waterman and Marcus and whoever else was involved in this design. And those are my comments this evening. What I would like to do is ask for a motion.
It looks like Commissioner Goldstein has his hand up. Commissioner Bonilla.
Oh. Well, thank you, Commissioner Roche. Commissioner Goldstein?
Yeah, thank you for noticing my hand up. So I just wanted to bring attention to the commissioners that I've got some reservations about, there's various terms for it, unbundling the parking, basically offering a discount if you don't have a car. I think the unintended consequence of that sometimes is people cheating the system by taking the discount and then parking their car on the street. And that's the sort of thing that we're trying to avoid. So I just wanted to state that caution. And then second to that, if I may, I would like to make the motion to approve.
Oh, well, excellent. Then we have the motion to approve. And you're saying approve as is, I'm assuming, as proposed. Was that correct, Mr. Goldstein?
Yeah, there's still some, design details that I trust the applicant Marcus can work out in terms of final colors and all of that stuff. I don't think we need to, bring it back to hear it again or, impose any of our design aesthetic on it. I trust these guys to get it done.
Sounds good.
I have a friendly amendment.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Andrews.
I propose that we add a public art element to that wall because I'm really concerned that wall is going to just get tagged.
Great idea.
I accept that friendly amendment.
Excellent. Commissioner Andrews. Yes, Commissioner Patton.
Would the maker of the motion be open to a condition that the developer be directed to continue to work with staff on final elevations, colors, and materials, and that it would come back to the Planning Commission as a consent calendar item, not as a public hearing item? My concern is that I don't think we've been real clear about or consistent in our comments about colors and materials, and I don't want Sarah to be in a box where she's trying to resolve something without clear direction. So if based on what everybody's expressed this evening, she could continue to work with them to find something that she thinks addresses what she heard, come and have it come back as a consent calendar item. Would the maker be open to that?
Could we summarize those comments?
Excuse me, what was that, Mr. Goldstein?
Oh, I'm sorry, I want to hear from Mr. Waterman.
I apologize for interrupting. I was wondering if we could summarize those comments so that we have clear direction.
Sure. So, Mr. Patton, Commissioner Patton, would you mind summarizing your comments, please? I thought they were clear, but go ahead.
Well, my comment was that I don't believe there was clear direction from the discussion by the full commission.
Correct.
So rather than have Sarah try to presume what everybody's thinking here, my suggestion is we have you guys work together with staff on colors, modified colors, perhaps some design changes, and then whatever you feel is appropriate, have it come back as a consent calendar item, not as a public hearing item. And then if it's acceptable to the group, we just vote on it and there's no hearing, you move forward. That would be my intent of the modified condition.
I think it's a nice plan, and I would accept that added to the motion, but I am concerned that it not place any undue burden on the applicant, because I think we're just getting too far into the weeds with it, my opinion. In the past, I think the staff have done a nice job of, sorting that out. I want pop. You guys, few of you don't want the pop. I think they, Marcus and the applicant can find a middle ground without having to bring it back for a consent. But if it's not a big burden on the applicant or Marcus, then I'd be open to that.
Sarah,
Here, I have a comment on that too.
Okay, well, hold on. Go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say, we do not have a consent calendar with the Planning Commission that is usually reserved for council meetings where they're making, where we just have not ever had a consent calendar for the Planning Commission, only had public hearing items. So that would be a big deviation from the way we've historically done everything. What we have done is what Commissioner Goldstein has indicated, which is you could add conditions of approval and you do defer that to staff working with an applicant. And that's typically the way that we've addressed it. From what I hear, it's a mixed feedback from the commission. I'm not sure I'm hearing, consensus amongst commissioners. So yeah, I agree, Commissioner Patton. It's not necessarily clear, but I also am not hearing, consensus among commissioners on what they would want to see. And so other than, maybe softening the more modern look of the townhome buildings that front Montgomery and toning down the colors a little bit. But aside from that, I'm not hearing anything beyond that. And I think that that's definitely something that we can address at a staff level if the commission would like to add a condition, as Commissioner Goldstein mentioned, and just deferring it to staff to work with the applicant. Adding, the need to bring it back to commission will certainly add more time, needing to find an agenda and to keep things moving. And I think that will be a cost to the applicant in both time to wait and get that, confirmation from the commission. So I would just offer that comment for your consideration.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. Commissioner Andrews, did you have something you wanted to add?
I was just going to say, I think we're not trying to be too nitpicky on the development. And if it's just more of a warm tone and then maybe a pop of color, and that would probably satisfy the commission, I think. And I don't think it would be, to me, I don't think it's necessary to bring it back, but that's just my opinion on that.
Okay, so the maker of the motion is Commissioner Goldstein. So Commissioner Goldstein, do you accept the amendment of Commissioner Patton or not?
No.
No, okay. Can you rephrase your motion with the amendment that's currently in it so we can see if we have a second?
Right, you'll have to remind me what Commissioner Andrews asked for the amendment. So my motion is to approve with the amendment as recommended by Ms. Andrews.
And that would be Commissioner Andrews. I know it's your public art wall, but do you want to be very clear about what that amendment is?
To add public art to that wall fronting mission.
Okay, so we're going to add that as a condition of approval, and that's currently within the motion. So is there a second for this motion?
Yeah, I will second this motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Roche. Any further discussion on this motion before I call for the vote? I see Commissioner Patton, you have your hand up, so the floor is yours.
I have no further comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Andrews, I see your hand is up, so the floor is yours.
No further comment, just a leftover lower hand.
Not a problem. Okay, so it sounds, yes, Mr. Martinez.
I just wanted to provide some clarification with respect to just the final choice of the colors and materials. We do have a condition, condition number 15, that's already within the conditions. And I'll read it verbatim, at least to a point, that all final exterior building finishes, paint colors, materials, and other architectural details shall be reviewed and approved by the Planning Division prior to the issuance of a building permit for the project. So we have some language of that already established, so we can kind of have another crack at the egg for the colors.
Sounds good. Thank you for that, Marcus. So, Ms. Chan, would you mind doing the roll call vote for this motion, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Commissioner Faria?
Yes.
Commissioner Goldstein?
Yes.
Commissioner Patton?
No.
Commissioner Roche?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Chair Bonilla?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it looks like we had 6 aye votes and we had 1 no vote. So the motion passes 6-1. So thank you. And now we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Okay. So it's going to be the approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes for July 9th, the last time we were together before our nice little recess we had. So is there a motion?
I move the item.
Oh, well, thank you, Commissioner Andrews. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Stevens. Ms. Chan, would you like to, before we go, are there any comments anyone wants to make on the notes? All right. Ms. Chan, would you mind doing a roll call vote for the approval of the meeting minutes of the July 9th Planning Commission meeting?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Commissioner Faria?
Yes.
Commissioner Goldstein?
Yes.
Commissioner Patton,
Abstain.
Commissioner Roche,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Chair Bonilla.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chan. So the meeting minutes have passed with 6 yes votes, and 1 abstention. So those are passed. Thank you all. Now we will move on to commission reports. So oral reports on planning or zoning matters. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Awesome. I don't have a lot to report back. Just thank you guys so much for joining our meeting tonight and for sticking through this new platform on Zoom webinar. And I think that everything went as smoothly as I could have hoped. So thank you all so much. I also wanted just to take a special opportunity. This is not the end, but I just wanted to take a special opportunity to thank Commissioner Faria for all of her service. This is likely her last Planning Commission.
The recording has stopped.
And I just really want to thank you so much. This is not the end. I've got more goodies coming for you, Commissioner Faria, but I do just want to thank you so much for all of your hard work.
This meeting is being recorded.
So thank you so much. And I hope that you are doing well, and I wish you well. And I hope we see you around volunteering and doing all kinds of wonderful things for the Hayward community. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Here, here.
We're going to miss you, Commissioner Faria. Don't go too far. Okay, thank you for that announcement, Sarah. Now, if there's no more reports on planning and zoning matters, we will move to commissioner referrals and announcements. So, commissioners, if you have something to say, raise your hand. And yes, Commissioner Andrews.
I believe Commissioner Faria was saying something, but she was mute. So I wanted to know if we can yield time for her to speak on her last meeting.
Oh, I just wanted to say, call the COVID call center. I work there a couple of days a week.
All right. Any other commissioner announcements or referrals?
I have a question. When is the call center available for people who are watching?
It's Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. And we will help people get appointments and answer their questions and direct them to the resources that are available.
That's very kind. Thank you for doing that for us and for our community. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Well, hearing nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn our meeting at 9:43. Thank you all, Commissioner Faria. Thank you so much for your service. Have a great night, everyone. And we will talk on September 24th at 7 p.m. See you then.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.